When Maria Rodriguez spent her last $300 on a rusted trailer for her disabled daughter, she had no idea the mysterious compartment beneath the floorboards contained Civil War artifacts that would lead to the discovery of America's most significant underground railroad terminal, transform her hometown of Liberty Mills into a historical landmark, and ultimately secure her family's future while rewriting American history. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. At 31, the former history teacher had never imagined she'd be counting food stamps and calculating which bills to skip each month. But life rarely follows the lesson plans we create, especially when a drunk driver takes your husband and leaves your 6-year-old daughter paralyzed from the waist down. Maria Rodriguez stood before the rustiest, most decrepit trailer in Liberty Mills Trailer Park, clutching an envelope containing $300 bills, her last hope wrapped in weathered paper. The October rain turned the Georgia clay into a muddy wasteland that seemed determined to swallow everything whole. "Mom, is this really it?" Isabella's voice carried from the van, where she waited in her wheelchair, protected from the rain. Maria forced optimism into her voice. "It just needs some love, mija. You'll see." The trailer, a 1978 Skyline that had seen better decades, sat crooked on its foundation, one end propped on cinder blocks, the other on rotting wooden beams. Rust had claimed most of the exterior, and the windows were either cracked or boarded up. But it was all she could afford, and it was on the ground floor, critical for Isabella's wheelchair. The morning had started with Maria's usual ritual, checking the bank balance, $347, reviewing the bills, rent overdue, medical insurance, lapsed, credit cards maxed, and measuring out Isabella's medications with the precision of someone who knew they couldn't afford to waste a single pill. The eviction notice had arrived yesterday. They had 72 hours to vacate their apartment. $300 cash, like we agreed, Maria said to the park owner, Dale Morrison, a grizzled man who looked like he'd been disappointed by life one too many times. Dale studied her with eyes that had seen too many desperate tenants come and go. The Liberty Mills trailer park wasn't anyone's first choice. It was where people ended up when they'd run out of choices. Situated on the outskirts of town, backing up to dense Georgia woods, the park housed society's forgotten, elderly unfixed. Incomes, day laborers, and now a widowed teacher with a wheelchair-bound daughter. As his means as is, Dale reminded her, pocketing the bills without counting them. No refunds, no complaints. Last tenant left it in a hurry 5 years ago. Haven't been inside since. What happened to them? Dale shifted uncomfortably, water dripping from the brim of his John Deere cap. Old Jake Matthews, war veteran kept to himself mostly, started claiming he heard voices coming from the floor, said the place was haunted by Civil War ghosts. Found him one morning sitting in his truck at 3 a.m., all his belongings packed, refusing to go back inside. Packed up and left that very day. He handed her a single key on a plastic fob. Haven't been able to rent it since. People around here are superstitious. Maria took the key, its weight heavier than its size suggested. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Call. Dale and Mom. He paused, something almost like sympathy flickering in his weathered face. That little girl of yours. Trailer's not set up for wheelchair access. You'll need to build a ramp. I know, Maria replied. I'll figure it out. As Dale's truck churned through the mud, leaving deep ruts that immediately filled with brown water, Maria stood alone in the rain, staring at her new home. The history teacher in her couldn't help but notice the trailer park sat on old land. She'd researched it obsessively before coming, a habit from her teaching days. This area had been settled before the Civil War, part of the old Whitman plantation, according to county records she'd found in the library's digital archives. The Whitman plantation. Maria had taught about it in her American history classes. 3,000 acres of cotton fields worked by over 200 slaves. Colonel Josiah Whitman had been one of the wealthiest men in antebellum Georgia until Sherman's march to the sea had reduced his mansion to ashes. The land had been subdivided and sold over the decades, eventually becoming farmland, then light industrial, and finally this collection of rusting trailers. "Mom?" Isabella called again, her voice carrying a note of worry she tried to hide. "Coming, baby," Maria replied, but she paused at the trailer's door. Something felt significant. Maybe it was the desperation of the moment, or maybe her historian's instinct, but she sensed she was crossing more than just a threshold. The door protested with a squeal that sent birds scattering from nearby trees. Inside, the smell hit her first: mildew, decay, and something else, earthier, older, like turned soil after rain. Her phone's flashlight revealed a disaster: water-stained walls where the roof had leaked, a floor soft with rot in places, and debris from the last tenants scattered everywhere. An overturned coffee table lay among yellowed newspapers, empty bottles, and what looked like notebooks filled with cramped handwriting. But it was shelter. And after losing their apartment, living in her van for 3 weeks, and watching Isabella try to stay brave while sleeping in a back seat, not designed for her needs, shelter was enough. "We'll clean it up," Maria whispered to herself, the same words her grandmother had used when they'd fled Honduras with nothing. "We'll make it home." She spent the next 20 minutes creating a makeshift ramp from wooden pallets she found behind the trailer, testing it carefully before returning to the van. Isabella waited patiently, her tablet balanced on her lap, educational videos playing. Even in crisis, Maria insisted on maintaining some normalcy. "Ready for the grand tour?" Maria asked with forced cheerfulness. Isabella's eyes, so like Francisco's, studied her mother's face. At 6, she'd developed the unsettling ability to see through adult pretenses. "It's going to be okay, Mom. We're together." Maria's throat tightened. When had her baby become the comforter? She lifted Isabella from the van. She'd gotten stronger these past months, muscles developing from necessity, and carried her up the improvised ramp. "Welcome home," Maria said as they crossed the threshold. Isabella's nose wrinkled at the smell, but she didn't complain. "Which room is mine?" An hour later, after settling Isabella in the van with snacks, water, and her tablet. "Just a little longer, mija. I need to check something." Maria began the overwhelming task of cleaning. She started in what would be Isabella's room, the smaller of 2 bedrooms, but closer to the bathroom, essential for her daughter's needs. The carpet was unsalvageable, moldy and reeking of something that might have been cat urine or worse. As Maria pulled it up, gagging at the smell, she noticed the old tenant's notebooks scattered throughout the trailer. Curiosity made her flip one open. May 15th. Voices again last night. Coming from below. Checked basement. Trailer don't have a basement. Called Dale. He laughed. Says I'm going crazy like old Pete did back in 92. May 18th. Found soft spot in floor. Afraid to check. Voices sound like singing sometimes. Old songs. Sad songs. May 22nd. Can't sleep. They're crying now. Children crying. Women singing. Men praying. All coming from below. Below where there ain't supposed to be nothing but dirt. Maria shivered, setting the notebook aside. Jake Matthews had been a veteran. PTSD could manifest in many ways. She returned to pulling up the carpet, using a knife to cut it into manageable sections. The plywood subfloor beneath was water-damaged and black, with mold in places. No wonder. The previous tenant had heard things. Mold could cause hallucinations. As she worked, Maria's hand suddenly went through a soft spot in the floor. The plywood crumbled like old bread, revealing a hole about 6 inches wide. She jerked her hand back, expecting to see dirt or the trailer's undercarriage. "Probably water damage," she muttered, pulling away more of the rotted wood to assess. The repair needed, but instead of the ground she expected to see, her flashlight beam disappeared into darkness. Maria froze. There was a space under the trailer. Not unusual, but this was different. The hole opened into what looked like an actual room, not just a crawl space. She pulled away more flooring, adrenaline temporarily overcoming exhaustion. The rot had been worst, near what she now realized was a concealed hatch. The wood had been deliberately cut in a square pattern, then covered over with newer plywood that had eventually rotted. Within minutes, she'd exposed a 3-foot square, opening with the remains of metal hinges still attached to one side. Maria's heart raced. In her years teaching history, she'd learned that old properties often held secrets, hidden prohibition cellars, forgotten storm shelters, concealed storage from various wars. But as she aimed her phone's light into the darkness, what she saw made her gasp. Wooden steps, worn smooth by use, led down into a proper room. The walls were lined with brick, old brick, the handmade kind with slight irregularities that dated it to before the Civil War. Mounted on those walls were metal brackets that had once held torches, and she could see the soot stains on the ceiling. Above them, "Isabella," Maria called, her voice shaky with excitement. "I need you to stay in the van a little longer, okay? Mom found something." "Found what?" "I'm not sure yet, baby. Just give me a few minutes." Maria's mind raced. She should call someone, the authorities, a university, anyone. But her mother's instinct, the part that had been counting pennies and skipping meals so Isabella could eat, whispered something else. "Look first. Understand what you've found." She thought of Jake Matthews's notebooks, his descriptions of voices from below. Had he discovered this too? Is this what had driven him away? Or had he been too afraid to look? Maria tested the first step. It creaked, but held. The air from below smelled of earth and age, carrying something that felt like history itself. Each step down felt like traveling backward through time. 8 steps in total, each one taking her further from the 21st century and deeper into America's hidden past. The chamber was roughly 10 feet square, the brick walls expertly laid, despite their age. The floor was hard-packed dirt, compressed by countless feet over who knew how many years. But it was what she saw along the walls that made Maria's knees weak. Shelves had been built into the brick, not crude planks, but carefully constructed. Storage. Most were empty, but some held objects that had survived the decades. Metal boxes spotted with rust, glass bottles that might have held medicine, ceramic jugs, and in one corner, wrapped in what looked like oilcloth, several bundles that had somehow resisted time's decay. Maria approached the largest bundle with hands that shook from more than cold. The oilcloth cracked at her touch, but had done its job. Inside was a leather portfolio, and within that, papers, documents. Her phone light caught faded ink, and she made out a date, April 12th, 1862. She sank to her knees in the dirt, carefully, spreading the papers on the ground. The first was a map, hand-drawn with meticulous detail, showing the local area, but with names she didn't recognize, except one. Whitman Plantation was clearly marked, and lines led from it to various points north, each marked with symbols she couldn't decipher. The second document made her hands tremble. "My dearest Catherine, the terminal beneath the Whitman house remains, secure despite increased patrols. 17 souls passed through last month, bound for the northern lines. 8 men, 5 women, and 4 children. The youngest was barely Isabella's age. The new overseer suspects nothing, though we must remain vigilant. The codes have changed again. 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks, pause, 1. The response must be, the river runs north when the moon is dark. I pray this war ends soon, so we might live without these necessary deceptions. How much longer must we pretend loyalty to a cause we abhor while risking our lives for the truth? We hold dear your devoted brother James. Maria's breath came in short gasps. A terminal, the Underground Railroad. Here beneath what was now a rusted trailer in a forgotten corner of Georgia, people had risked everything to ferry escaped slaves to freedom. More documents revealed themselves as she carefully unwrapped the bundles. Lists of names: Moses, Ruth, Solomon, Mary, with dates beside them, and destinations: Ohio, Michigan, Canada. Some entries were marked with crosses, and Maria's heart clenched as she realized these indicated those who hadn't made it. One ledger contained detailed records. June 3rd, 1863. Solomon and family, wife Ruth, children aged 4 and 7. Arrived in poor health. Ruth's feet badly injured from walking. Treated with tincture and wrapped. Hid here 6 days until patrol passed. Successfully moved to Jameson Station. June 19th, 1863. Mary and infant son. Baby coughing badly. Dangerous to move. Sarah, Mrs. Whitman, visited under pretense of inspecting quarters. Brought medicine hidden in sewing basket. Both recovered. Moved north, July 2nd. Sarah Whitman. Maria's mind reeled. The plantation owner's wife had been part of the Underground Railroad. She'd risked not just her social standing, but her life to help escaped slaves. Her phone buzzed, a text from Isabella wondering what was taking so long. Maria looked at the screen, then at the historical treasure surrounding her. She quickly photographed everything: the chamber, the documents, the artifacts, her teacher's training overriding her excitement. Documentation first, always. Among the papers, she found a small, leather-bound journal. The entries were in different handwriting, more feminine. I cannot reconcile the man I married with the cause he serves. Josiah speaks of property rights and state sovereignty while human beings suffer in our fields. When this war ends, and pray God it ends with freedom for all, I will confess my activities. Until then, this chamber serves God's work, not man's law. It was signed simply S.W., Sarah Whitman. Another entry made Maria's eyes blur with tears. Tonight, a girl no older than 12 arrived alone. She'd walked from the Dawson plantation, 30 miles through swamp and forest. Her back bore fresh whip marks. As I treated her wounds, she sang softly, a song her mother had taught her, the same lullabies I sing to my own children. How can Josiah not see? How can any of them not see? We are all God's children. Maria carefully returned the documents to their wrappers, her mind spinning with implications. This wasn't just a hiding place, it was a full station on the Underground Railroad, complete with medical supplies, detailed records, and evidence of a network that had saved dozens, possibly hundreds of lives. As she climbed back up the worn steps, her historian's training warred with her maternal instincts. This discovery needed to be properly documented, shared with the academic community, preserved for history. But it could also be the answer to their desperate situation. Historical sites brought grants, tourism dollars, preservation funds. Universities paid for research access. Museums competed for artifacts this significant. She looked around the decrepit trailer with new eyes. The soft spot in the floor hadn't been random decay. It was directly above the chamber entrance. Had previous tenants discovered it and been frightened away? Or had the secret been kept all these years, waiting for someone who would understand its significance? Back outside, Maria found Isabella had rolled down the van's window. "Mom, you've been gone forever, and you're all muddy. What did you find?" Maria looked at her daughter, her brave, brilliant daughter who'd lost so much but kept smiling. Isabella had her father's optimism, his ability to find light in darkness. What would Francisco say about this discovery? She could almost hear his voice. "God provides, mi amor, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. I think I found our miracle baby, but first let me get you inside where it's dry." As she wheeled Isabella through the rain toward their new home, Maria's mind was already working through the next steps. She needed to contact Dr. Patricia Williams at Emory. Her mentor would know how to handle this properly. The site needed protection, the artifacts preservation. But first, she had to make the trailer livable, create a safe space for Isabella while securing the chamber below. Inside, Maria set Isabella up in the living room with blankets and pillows while she explained. Her discovery in terms a 6-year-old could understand. Like in the movies? Isabella asked, eyes wide. Secret passages and everything? Better than the movies, Mija. This is real history, real people who helped other people find freedom. Can I see? Maria hesitated. The steps were steep. The chamber, not wheelchair accessible. Soon, baby. First, we need to make it safe, and we need to tell the right people so it's protected. Isabella nodded solemnly. It's important, isn't it? Like Dad used to say, we have to remember history so we don't repeat the bad parts. That's exactly right. Maria kissed her daughter's forehead. You're so smart, just like your papa. That night, as rain drummed on the trailer's metal roof, Maria worked by lamplight to clean and organize their new home. She'd covered the entrance to the chamber with a piece of plywood and Isabella's rug, but her mind kept drifting to what lay beneath. She thought about Jake Matthews, the veteran who'd fled in the night. Had he heard actual voices, some acoustic quirk of the chamber that carried sound, or had the weight of history itself driven him away? Not everyone was comfortable confronting the past, especially parts of it that revealed such profound injustice and equally profound courage. At midnight, after Isabella was asleep, Maria carefully descended once more into the chamber. She needed to catalogue what was there, create a proper inventory. Her teacher's instincts demanded it. But more than that, she felt a responsibility to the people who'd risked everything in this space. In one corner, she found a child's wooden doll, crudely carved but worn smooth by handling. On a shelf, a Bible, with margin notes in multiple hands, medicine bottles with labels she could barely read, laudanum, willow bark extract, carbolic acid, tools for treating wounds and illness in secret without access to proper medical care. Behind one shelf, she discovered a loose brick. Inside the hiding space was a small leather pouch. Maria's hands trembled as she opened it, revealing a collection of coins, gold and silver, and a note. For the journey north. May God speed you to freedom. SWW. Sarah Whitman had hidden escape funds for the fugitives. The coins were worth a fortune now, not just monetarily, but historically. Each one represented hope, sacrifice, the price of freedom measured in gold. As Maria climbed back to the trailer, she realized she'd been crying. The weight of history, the courage of those who'd passed through this chamber, the desperation of families torn apart by slavery, it all crashed over her like a wave. But mixed with the sorrow was something else, hope. The same hope that had driven escaped slaves north, that had motivated Sarah Whitman to risk everything, that had kept this secret safe for over 150 years until it could surface at just the right moment. Maria looked at Isabella sleeping peacefully on the makeshift bed, her small chest rising and falling steadily. They'd lost so much, Francisco, their home, their stability. But here, in this rundown trailer above a piece of American history, they'd found something invaluable. Tomorrow, she'd call Dr. Williams. Tomorrow, she'd begin the careful process of revealing this discovery to the world. Tomorrow, she'd start fighting to preserve this site and share its stories. But tonight, Maria Rodriguez, widow, mother, protector of history, sat in a rusted trailer and felt the presence of all who'd come before. The freedom seekers, the secret helpers, the brave souls who'd risked everything for justice. Their voices, carried on the Georgia wind and seeping up through the floorboards, whispered a simple truth. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the most unexpected places, waiting for the right person to find them. The chamber below held more than artifacts. It held proof that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. that courage came in many forms, that hope could survive even the darkest chapters of history. And for a struggling single mother who'd spent her last $300 on a chance at shelter, it held the promise of salvation, not just financial, but spiritual. She'd been chosen by history itself to be the guardian of these stories, the voice for those who'd been silenced. The rain continued to fall, drumming its ancient rhythm on the trailer's roof. But inside, warmed by possibility and purpose, Maria Rodriguez began to plan a future built on the foundation of the past. The terminal beneath was no longer just history. It was hope, heritage, and the first chapter of her family's resurrection. The next morning arrived with a brilliance that seemed to mock the previous day's storms. Sunlight streamed through the trailer's cracked windows, creating patterns on the floor that reminded Maria of cathedral glass. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with the implications of her discovery, but exhaustion had finally claimed her around 4 a.m. Isabella's voice woke her. "Mom, there's people outside." Maria bolted upright from the mattress on the floor, immediately alert. Through the window, she could see Dale Morrison's truck, but he wasn't alone. A well-dressed woman in her 50s stood beside him, gesturing animatedly at the trailer. "Stay here, mija," Maria said, quickly pulling on yesterday's jeans and a clean shirt. She grabbed her phone, checking the time, 8:17 a.m. She'd meant to call Dr. Williams first thing, but fatigue had betrayed her. Outside, Dale looked uncomfortable. The woman with him radiated the kind of aggressive energy Maria recognized from school board meetings, someone used to getting their way. Mrs. Rodriguez. The woman's smile was professionally warm, but didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Carolyn Hartwell from Hartwell Development. I understand you just moved in yesterday." Maria's guard went up immediately. "Yes, can I help you?" "I certainly hope so. You see, our company has been interested in acquiring this property for some time. We're developing a shopping complex on the adjacent land, and having a trailer park next door is—" She paused delicately. "Not ideal for our vision." "The park's not for sale," Dale interjected. "Told you that already, Ms. Hartwell." "Everything's for sale at the right price," Carolyn countered smoothly. "And individual trailers can be relocated. Mrs. Rodriguez, we'd be prepared to offer you considerable compensation to move, enough to find much better accommodations for you and your daughter." Maria felt the ground shift beneath her feet, but not in the way Carolyn intended. "This is my home. We're not interested in moving." "You haven't heard our offer. Given the condition of this particular unit, we could go as high as $10,000 for relocation expenses. Cash. $10,000. 2 months ago, that would have solved everything. Now standing above what might be the most significant underground railroad discovery in decades, Maria felt the universe's ironic timing. "Thank you, but no," Maria said firmly. "We're staying." Carolyn's smile flickered. "I see. Well, the offer stands. Dale, perhaps you could explain to your new tenant the reality of maintaining a property like this. The costs can be overwhelming." After they left, Maria stood in the morning sun, processing the encounter. Hartwell Development. She'd need to research them, understand what she was potentially up against. But first, she had a call to make. Dr. Patricia Williams answered on the second ring. "Maria, my God, how are you? I heard about Francisco. I'm so sorry." "Thank you, Pat." Maria took a breath. "I need your help. I've found something. Something big." She spent the next 20 minutes describing the discovery, sending photos as she talked. The silence on the other end grew heavier with each revelation. "Maria," Dr. Williams finally said, her voice shaking, "if this is authentic and from what you're showing me, it appears to be, this could be the find of the decade." The Whitman Plantation Underground Railroad Station was a legend. Historians have speculated about it for years, but no physical evidence had ever been found. What do I do? First, secure the site. Don't let anyone else in that chamber until I get there. I'm canceling my classes today. Expect me by noon. And Maria, this could change everything for you. After the call, Maria found Isabella in the living room, carefully arranging her stuffed animals on the coffee table she'd cleaned. The simple domesticity of the scene, her daughter trying to make a home in chaos, strengthened Maria's resolve. Baby, some important people are coming today to look at what Mummy found. I need you to be my special helper, okay? Isabella nodded solemnly. Will they help us keep our house? The question cut deep. At 6, Isabella understood more about their precarious situation than Maria wished. I think so, mija. I really think. So, by 11, Maria had cleaned the main living areas as best she could and created a detailed map of the chamber's layout. She'd also started a journal, documenting everything she remembered about finding the space. Her historian's training kicked in. Provenance was everything in authenticating a discovery. A knock interrupted her writing. Through the window, she saw a man she didn't recognize. Tall, African-American, mid-40s, wearing a university windbreaker. Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm Dr. Marcus Thompson from the Atlanta History Center. Pat Williams called me, said I needed to see this immediately. Maria hesitated. She didn't mention she's stuck in traffic. Construction on I-75. She asked me to come ahead, start the preliminary assessment. He showed his credentials. I specialize in antebellum archaeology and underground railroad sites. If this is what Pat thinks it is, you've made a discovery that could rewrite textbooks. His excitement seemed genuine, and his credentials checked out. Maria led him inside, watching his face change as she revealed the entrance to the chamber. My God, he breathed. The construction alone. This is definitely period correct. He looked at her with something approaching awe. You found this. Yesterday, the floor was rotted when I pulled up the carpet. Maria gestured helplessly. I'm a history teacher. Was. I knew it was significant. Dr. Thompson descended carefully, his excitement palpable. Maria followed, watching as he examined the walls, the shelves, the artifacts she'd carefully replaced. The brick pattern is consistent with 1840s construction, he murmured. These torch brackets, hand-forged iron, and the layout. He turned in a slow circle. This matches descriptions from the Caldwell letters. Caldwell letters? Private. Correspondence between Underground Railroad conductors. Jeremiah Caldwell mentioned a secure room beneath Whitman's very feet, but historians assumed it was metaphorical. His hands shook as he photographed the chamber. May I see the documents? Maria showed him the wrapped bundles, watching as he carefully examined the papers with gloved hands she hadn't noticed him put on. Sarah Whitman, he said softly. We suspected she was sympathetic to the cause, but this proves she was. An active conductor. Do you understand what this means? The wife of one of Georgia's largest slave owners was secretly helping slaves escape. The courage that must have taken Dr. Thompson, Maria began, then stopped. Something felt off. His examination was thorough, professional, but there was an undercurrent of urgency that seemed excessive. Her phone rang. Dr. Williams. Maria, whatever you do, don't let anyone into that chamber. There's something you need to know about Hartwell Development. They're not just building a shopping center. They're specifically acquiring historic properties. There's been speculation about... The line crackled with static. Pat? Pat? Maria looked at her phone. No signal. That was odd. She'd had 3 bars a moment ago. Problem? Dr. Thompson asked, still examining documents. Phone died. Maria felt unease creeping up her spine. Dr. Thompson, I think we should wait for Pat before Mrs. Rodriguez. The voice came from above. A woman descended the steps, Carolyn Hartwell, but her demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the fake warmth, replaced by cold efficiency. I apologize for the deception, but when Dale mentioned you'd found something in the floor, well, we had to act quickly. You're not from the History Center, Maria said to Thompson, though it wasn't a question. Oh, I am, he replied, carefully setting down the documents. I just have a more flexible arrangement with certain parties. Hartwell Development Funds, my research in exchange for first rights to significant fines. These artifacts belong in a museum, Maria protested, moving between them and the documents. They'll be preserved, Carolyn assured her. Privately, but preserved, and you'll be well compensated. 50,000 for your silence and cooperation. That's enough for a real home for your daughter, proper medical care, a fresh start. Absolutely not. Maria's teacher voice emerged, the one that could quiet a classroom of 30 teenagers. This site is historically significant. People need to know. People will know what we decide they should know, Carolyn interrupted. Mr. Thompson here will authenticate select pieces. A nice story about the Hartwell Corporation's commitment to preserving history. Everyone wins. Get out, Maria said quietly. Both of you, now. Thompson looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Rodriguez, you don't understand. Hartwell has been tracking potential underground railroad sites for years. The shopping center is just cover. They're assembling a private collection that exploits history for profit, Maria finished. Reduces courage and sacrifice to commodity. Get out. Carolyn's eyes narrowed. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I offered you a fortune. Remember that when you're evicted for code violations, when Child Services questions whether a mold-infested trailer is suitable for a disabled child, is that a threat? A new voice, older, authoritative. Dr. Patricia Williams descended the steps, and she wasn't alone. Behind her were 2 uniformed police officers and a man in a federal marshal's jacket. Pat! Maria felt relief wash over her. Sorry I'm late. I made some calls on the way. She fixed Carolyn with a stare that could freeze blood. Ms. Hartwell, I believe you're familiar with the Archaeological Resources Protection Act. Attempting to remove artifacts from a potential national historic site is a federal crime. This is private property, Carolyn protested, which may soon be subject to federal protection. The marshal stepped forward. Agent Ramirez, National Park Service. Dr. Williams contacted us about a significant discovery. I'll need both of you to leave while we secure the site. Thompson set down the document he'd been holding. This is all a misunderstanding. I was simply conducting a preliminary... Save it for your review board, Dr. Williams snapped. I've already contacted the university. Your flexible arrangements are about to become very public. As Hartwell and Thompson were escorted out, Maria sank onto the bottom step, adrenaline leaving her shaky. You okay? Dr. Williams asked, sitting beside her. That escalated quickly. Welcome to the world of historic preservation, big money competing, interests and occasional criminals. She looked around the chamber with wonder. But Maria, this is extraordinary. Better than I imagined. Agent Ramirez was photographing everything. We'll need to bring in a full archaeological team. This site will need protection while we process the National Register application. Mrs. Rodriguez, you may have found one of the most intact underground railroad stations in the South. What does that mean for us? Maria asked. My daughter and... It means, Dr. Williams said gently, that you're about to become caretakers of a national treasure. There are grants, federal funds for site preservation. Universities will want to fund research here. Museums will compete for exhibition rights. She squeezed Maria's hand. You did the right thing calling me. They climbed back to the trailer, where Isabella waited, eyes wide. Mom, were those bad people? No, baby, just confused people. But these are friends. Maria introduced Dr. Williams and Agent Ramirez, watching Isabella relax at their warm manner. Your mom's a hero, Dr. Williams told Isabella. She found something. Very important, I know, Isabella said proudly. She's good at finding important things. She found my dad when everyone else gave up looking. Maria's eyes filled. After Francisco's accident, when the other car had left the scene, she'd spent weeks working with police, tracking down witnesses until they'd found the drunk driver. She'd never realized Isabella had understood her determination. Well, Agent, Ramirez said, we need to establish a perimeter. This is now a protected archaeological site. Dr. Thompson had the right idea about one thing. We need to move fast. Once word gets out, we'll have treasure hunters, media, all sorts of interest. Where? Will we live? Isabella asked in a small voice. Right here, the agent assured her. This is your home. We'll just make sure it's very well protected. Over the next hours, the trailer park transformed. Federal vehicles arrived, creating a secure perimeter. Archaeological equipment was unloaded. Media began gathering at the park entrance, held back by security. Dr. Williams worked with Maria to catalogue the initial findings. Each document was photographed, its location mapped. The coins Sarah Whitman had hidden were confirmed as authentic, their value both monetary and historical immense. Look at this, Dr. Williams said, showing Maria a ledger entry. July 1863, 20 souls delivered to the promise of Jordan. That's code. Jordan meant Canada. 20 people in 1 month. This was a major station. As afternoon wore on, more experts arrived. Dr. James Harrison from the Smithsonian, Professor Angela Martinez from Howard University. Each reacted with the same awe Maria had felt. The preservation is remarkable, Dr. Harrison noted. The oilcloth wrapping, the brick construction, it created a perfect microclimate. These documents should have deteriorated decades ago. Agent Ramirez pulled Maria aside. We need to discuss protection. You and your daughter may need to relocate temporarily while we... No! Maria's voice was firm. This is our home. Isabella's been through enough upheaval. I understand, but there are security concerns. Once this goes public, then increase security here. We're not leaving. That evening, as the sun set over Liberty Mills, Maria sat with Dr. Williams in the trailer's small kitchen. Isabella was in her room, video chatting excitedly with her grandmother about the day's events. The Hartwell situation, Maria began. How did they know? Dr. Williams sighed. There's an underground market, pardon the expression, in historical artifacts. Collectors who will pay millions for authentic pieces. Hartwell's been suspected of acquiring sites, extracting valuable items, then developing the land. But Thompson will likely lose his position. Using academic credentials for private gain violates every ethical standard we have. She paused. You could have taken their money. No one would have known. Everyone would have known, Maria corrected. Everyone who hid in that chamber, everyone who risked their lives for freedom, their stories deserve to be told properly. That's why this will work out for you. Integrity matters in this field. Dr. Williams pulled out her tablet. I've been making calls. The National Trust for Historic Preservation is interested. There's emergency funding available for site protection, and several universities want to discuss research partnerships. What about Isabella? Her medical needs will be covered. Sites of national significance come with federal support, health insurance, educational funds, housing assistance. You'll be official caretakers, with salary and benefits. Maria felt tears coming, relief, exhaustion, joy mixing into emotional overload. Yesterday I had $300 and no hope. Today, you're guardian of American history. Life's funny that way. A knock interrupted them. Agent Ramirez entered with a laptop. Mrs. Rodriguez, the Secretary of the Interior wants to speak with you. This discovery is that significant. As Maria was connected to the video call, she thought about the morning's desperation. Carolyn Hartwell had offered her escape, money to run from problems. But running had never been Maria's way. She'd stayed and fought for Francisco's justice. She'd stayed and fought for Isabella's care. Now she'd stay and fight for the voices history had silenced. "Mrs. Rodriguez," the secretary began, "I understand. You've made a remarkable discovery, one that could reshape our understanding of the Underground Railroad network." "I just pulled up some rotted floorboards," Maria said honestly. "The people who deserve recognition are those who built that chamber, who risked everything to help others reach freedom." "Well said. We're fast-tracking the National Historic Landmark designation. There will be challenges, legal processes, preservation requirements, but we'll provide full support." "Thank you, sir." "No, Mrs. Rodriguez, thank you. Sites like this remind us that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, that courage isn't limited to battlefields." After the call, Maria found Isabella in her room, surrounded by books Dr. Williams had brought. Children's stories about the Underground Railroad. "Mom, will we like them, the people who hid?" Maria considered the question. "How do you mean, mija?" "We were running too, from the bills and the mean landlord and not having enough food sometimes. And we found a hiding place." The parallel hadn't occurred to Maria, but Isabella's 6-year-old wisdom saw clearly. "I suppose we were, baby. Sometimes people need refuge for different reasons. And now we get to help tell their stories? Yes, we're the storytellers now." As night fell, the trailer park settled into a strange new rhythm. Federal security patrolled the perimeter. Archaeologists worked in shifts, carefully documenting the chamber by floodlight. Media vans lined the street outside, their reporters, speaking in hushed tones about the significance of the find. Maria stood at her window, watching it all with a mixture of wonder and worry. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Hartwell Development wouldn't give up easily. The media attention would be overwhelming. The pressure to commercialize the discovery would be intense. But tonight, she felt the presence of those who'd come. Before, Sarah Whitman risking everything to follow conscience over convention, the unnamed heroes who'd built the chamber, the freedom seekers who'd hidden in darkness while dreaming of light. "We're safe now," she whispered to them. "Your stories are safe," Isabella called from her room. "Mom, can you tell me more about the brave lady who helped people escape?" Maria smiled, heading to her daughter's bedside. Some stories were worth telling again and again, passing from one generation to the next like torches in the darkness. As she began to speak about courage and compassion, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, she felt the weight of history transform into wings of hope. The chamber below was no longer a secret. It was a testament, a classroom, a bridge between past and future. And Maria Rodriguez, who'd bought a trailer with her last $300, had become its guardian and voice. Outside, the October moon rose over Liberty Mills, illuminating a small trailer that held enormous truths. The same moon had witnessed escape and capture, fear and hope, endings and beginnings. Now it watched over a new chapter, one where the silenced would speak, the hidden would be revealed, and a struggling family would find purpose in preservation. The Underground Railroad had saved lives in the 1860s. Now, 160 years later, it would save 2 more, not through physical escape, but through the power of story, the value of truth, and the enduring principle that some things matter more than money. Maria tucked Isabella in, kissing her forehead gently. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and contracts, interviews and investigations. But tonight, in a trailer above history, a mother and daughter were home, safe, connected to something larger than themselves. The voices Jake Matthews had heard were real, not ghosts, but echoes of courage, whispers of hope that had waited patiently for the right person to listen. Maria Rodriguez had listened, and now the whole world would hear. As she returned to the kitchen where Dr. Williams was still working, Maria felt Francisco's presence strongly. Her husband had always believed in purpose, in providence, in the idea that life's hardest moments often preceded its greatest gifts. "Thank you," she whispered to his memory, "for teaching me to stay strong, to stay faithful, to stay." The discovery in the chamber was remarkable, but the true revelation was simpler. Sometimes salvation comes not from running away, but from digging deeper, not from selling out, but from standing firm, not from forgetting the past, but from embracing its lessons. The trailer might be rusted, the floor might have holes, but beneath it all lay truth, courage, and the promise of redemption. Maria Rodriguez had bought more than a home. She'd purchased a purpose, and that, as the freedom seekers below had known, was priceless. 6 weeks after Maria's discovery, the Liberty Mills trailer park had undergone a metamorphosis that even the most optimistic observer couldn't have predicted. Where rusted trailers once stood in isolated decay, a transformation was taking place that would soon make this forgotten corner of Georgia one of the most significant historical sites in America. Maria stood on the newly constructed wooden deck attached to her trailer, watching as archaeologists carefully excavated additional chambers they'd discovered extending from the original room. The network was more extensive than anyone had imagined. 3 connected chambers that had housed dozens of freedom seekers at a time, complete with ventilation shafts ingeniously disguised as root cellars. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" A young graduate student approached, her face flushed with excitement. "We found something you need to see." Maria followed her to excavation site C, where Dr. Williams waited with barely contained enthusiasm. The archaeologist held up a small leather journal, its pages yellowed but intact. "It's Sarah Whitman's personal diary," Dr. Williams breathed. "Hidden in a wall cavity. Listen to this. Today marks the 100th soul we've guided to freedom." Josiah grows more suspicious, but I've convinced him my frequent illnesses require daily walks for constitution. If he knew these walks take me to the chambers below our very feet. Maria felt the familiar chill of connection to the past. Each discovery added layers to their understanding of the Underground Railroad's operations, but also to Sarah Whitman's. And courage. The woman had lived a double life for years, married to a slaveholder, while secretly undermining the very system that supported their wealth. "Mom!" Isabella's voice carried across the site. Maria turned to see her daughter wheeling herself down the new ramp, her face bright with purpose. The transformation in Isabella had been as remarkable as the site itself. Once struggling with feelings of helplessness, she'd become the unofficial junior historian of the project, greeting visitors and sharing the stories they'd uncovered. "The film crew is here," Isabella announced. "They want to interview you about the letter." The letter? Maria still felt overwhelmed by its implications. Found just 2 days ago, it was correspondence between Sarah Whitman and Frederick Douglass himself, discussing the strategic importance of the Liberty Mills station. Douglass had called it the heartbeat of Georgia's path to freedom. As Maria walked toward the documentary crew, she passed the new visitor center, a modest building erected with National Park Service funds. Inside, the first exhibits were being installed, including reproductions of the documents she'd found that first night. The originals were being preserved in climate-controlled storage, but the stories they told were being shared with the world. Mrs. Rodriguez, the director, an earnest woman named Rebecca Stone, greeted her. "Can we film you in the original chamber? The lighting down there is perfect for—" "Of course," Maria agreed. She'd grown comfortable with the media attention, understanding that every interview, every documentary helped ensure the site's protection and funding. Descending into the chamber still gave her goosebumps. LED lights now illuminated the space, revealing details invisible that first night, names carved into bricks, tally marks counting days in hiding, and in one corner a child's drawing scratched into the wall showing stick figures holding hands. Under stars. Tell us about that first night, Rebecca prompted as cameras rolled. Maria had told the story dozens of times, but it never felt routine. I was desperate, she began honestly. We'd lost everything. That $300 was all we had left. When I found the soft spot in the floor, I was worried about repair costs, not historical discoveries. But something made you look deeper. Maybe instinct, maybe desperation, maybe... Maria paused, thinking of Jake Matthews' notebooks they'd found, filled with his certainty that voices called from below. Maybe the ones who hid here weren't done telling their stories. You've become quite the philosopher, Rebecca noted with a smile. History does that to you, especially this history. Maria ran her hand along the brick wall. These people risked everything for an idea, that freedom was worth any danger, any sacrifice. How do you discover something like that and not be changed? The interview continued, covering familiar ground. The Hartwell development threat, the federal intervention, the ongoing discoveries. But Rebecca asked a new question that made Maria pause. Your husband was an immigrant from Honduras. Do you see parallels between these historical refugees and modern ones? Maria considered carefully. Francisco used to say that borders are just lines on maps, but freedom is written on hearts. The people who hid here were refugees in their own country, fleeing violence and oppression. So yes, I see parallels. The courage required to leave everything behind, to risk everything for hope of a better life. That's universal. And now you're preserving their stories. We're not just preserving them, Maria corrected. We're continuing them. This site isn't a monument to the past. It's a bridge to the future. After the interview, Maria found Isabella in the Visitors' A Center, leading a group of school children through the exhibits. Her daughter's clear voice carried across the room. And this is the doll we found. We think a little girl named Lucy left it behind. She was 7 years old, just like me, when she hid here with her mama. They were scared, but they were brave. Too, being scared and brave at the same time is okay. The teacher accompanying the children wiped away tears. Isabella had that effect on people. Her wheelchair seemed to disappear when she spoke about courage overcoming adversity. Dr. Williams appeared at Maria's elbow. She's a natural educator, like her mother. She wants to be a historian now. Last month it was a marine biologist. Why not both? The world needs Renaissance women. Dr. Williams checked her tablet. Speaking of which, we need to discuss the university proposals. Yale wants to establish a permanent research center here. Harvard's offering a joint program. And Emory wants to name the site after me. I know. Maria felt uncomfortable with the attention. Shouldn't it be named after Sarah Whitman or the people who escaped through here? The Rodriguez Whitman Freedom Center has a nice ring to it, Dr. Williams suggested, honoring both past and present courage. Before Maria could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a blocked number. Ms. Rodriguez, this is Thomas Hartwell, Carolyn's father. I understand you've had some interactions with my daughter. Maria tensed. If this is about... Please hear me out. I'm calling to apologize. Carolyn's methods were inexcusable. But I also want to propose something different. Hartwell Development has resources you need. We'd like to fund a permanent museum on the site with you as director. Full creative control, generous salary, and most importantly, protection from future development. Why would you do that? There was a pause. My great-great-grandmother was Sarah Whitman's sister. I've known about the chambers my whole life, but had thought they were destroyed. When Carolyn told me what she tried to do, his voice cracked. Some things matter more than profit, Ms. Rodriguez. Let me make this right. Maria felt the ground shift again. I need to think about it. Of course. But know this, with or without our involvement, you've earned my deepest respect. What you've done, what you're doing, it honors all our ancestors." After hanging up, Maria stood in stunned silence. The universe, it seemed, wasn't done with. Surprises? That evening, as the site closed to visitors, Maria convened what had become their nightly ritual. She, Isabella, Dr. Williams, and Agent Ramirez, who'd become more protector than prosecutor, gathered in the trailer's kitchen for dinner and discussion. "Hartwell wants to fund a museum." Ramirez nearly choked on his coffee. "The same Hartwell who tried to steal artifacts. The father, not the daughter," Maria clarified. "He claims family connection to Sarah Whitman." "We can verify that," Dr. Williams said, already typing. "If it's true, it adds another layer to the story. Two branches of a family, one preserving slavery, one fighting it. Very American." "What do you think, Misha?" Maria asked Isabella. Her daughter considered gravely. "Sometimes people do bad things, but then try to fix them. Like when Tommy pushed me at school, but then became my friend. Maybe they want to be good now?" "From the mouths of babes," Ramirez muttered. The conversation was interrupted by a knock. Dale Morrison stood at the door, hat in hand, looking unusually formal. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's something you all should know. I've been made an offer for the trailer park. Big company wants to buy the whole thing." Maria's heart sank. After everything. "But," Dale continued, "I'm not selling. Not if it means disturbing what you've built here." He shifted uncomfortably. "My grandfather worked the Whitman plantation. Never talked about it much. But I remember him saying there were good white folks who helped when they could. Maybe that chamber saved one of my ancestors. Seems wrong to let it be destroyed now." The room fell silent, processing this unexpected solidarity. Maria found her voice first. "Thank you, Dale. That means more than you know." He nodded gruffly. "Besides, having a National Historic Site next door is good for property values. I'm not completely altruistic." But his smile softened the words. After Dale left, the group returned to planning. The site's future was securing itself piece by piece. Federal protection, academic partnerships, now potentially private funding from an unexpected source. But Maria knew the real security came from something else: community buy-in. When locals like Dale saw themselves in the story, the site became theirs to protect. "We should expand the narrative," Maria suggested. "Not just the Underground Railroad, but the ongoing story of freedom, immigration, civil rights, modern struggles for justice. Make it relevant to today." "A living museum," Dr. Williams mused. "I like it. History isn't just what happened, it's what's happening." "Can we have a freedom bell?" Isabella asked suddenly. "Like in Philadelphia. People could ring it when they become citizens, or when they escape bad situations, or just when they need hope." Agent Ramirez smiled. "That's the best idea I've heard all week." Later that night, after Isabella was asleep, Maria sat alone in the chamber. LED lights could illuminate the space, but she preferred candles, imagining how it looked to those who'd hidden here. Shadows dancing on brick walls, the smell of earth and fear and hope mingling in close air. She'd started a practice of reading aloud from the documents they'd found, giving voice to long silenced stories. Tonight, she read from a letter written by a young girl named Amelia. "Mama says we leave tonight. I'm scared of the dark, but more scared of staying. The lady with kind eyes, Mrs. Sarah, gave me cornbread and said brave girls grow up to change the world. I want to be brave. I want to change the world." Maria wondered what became of Amelia. Did she make it north? Did she grow up to change the world? The historical record was silent, but Maria chose to believe she had. "You did change the world," she whispered to the shadows. "Your courage brought me here, saved my family. Your story will inspire thousands." Footsteps on the stairs made her. In turn, Dr. Williams descended, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Couldn't sleep either," the professor asked, settling beside Maria. "This place is addictive. Every time I come down here, I feel them, their presence, their courage." Maria accepted the tea gratefully. "Do you think I'm doing right by them? All this attention, the tourism that'll come?" "You're giving them what was stolen, their voices, their place in history. That's all any of us want, isn't it? To be remembered, to matter." They sat in comfortable silence, sipping tea in a chamber that had sheltered so many. The transformation from hidden shame to celebrated shrine was nearly complete, but Maria knew the real change was internal. She'd arrived broken, desperate, with nothing but $300 and fading hope. Now she was guardian of American heritage, her daughter's future secured, their story intertwined with those who'd come before. "The Hartwell offer," Dr. Williams ventured. "You're considering it?" "If the connection is real, if his intentions are genuine, yes. Sarah Whitman's descendant funding the museum feels like completion, reconciliation, the kind of healing America needs. Poetic justice," Dr. Williams agreed. "The wealth built on slavery, now preserving slavery's destruction." A text from Isabella lit up Maria's phone. "Mum, are you in the chamber? I had a dream about Lucy. She says thank you." Maria smiled through sudden tears. Isabella had started having vivid dreams about the children who'd hidden here, creating elaborate stories about their lives. Whether imagination or something more, the dreams brought comfort and connection. "Coming up, baby," Maria texted back. As she climbed the worn steps, Maria felt the weight of responsibility, but also wings of purpose. 6 weeks ago, she'd been drowning. Now she was soaring, lifted by stories older than memory, but newer than tomorrow. The trailer still needed work. Pipes leaked, walls showed water damage, electricity flickered, but FEMA had approved emergency housing funds, and contractors would start renovations next week. The irony wasn't lost on Maria. The government that had failed to help when she was simply poor now showered resources because she was historically significant. Back in the trailer, she found Isabella awake, sketchpad in her lap. "Couldn't sleep? I was drawing the Freedom Bell." Isabella showed her the design. A bell surrounded by hands of different colors, all reaching upward. Everyone who rings it adds their handprint, so it becomes a rainbow of all the people finding freedom. "It's perfect, Mika. Do you think Daddy can see us, see what we're doing?" Maria pulled her daughter close. "I know he can, and he's proud, so proud." They sat together, mother and daughter, in a trailer that had become a bridge between worlds. Outside, security lights illuminated the excavation sites where more secrets waited to be discovered. Inside, 2 hearts beat with purpose, connected to the past, committed to the future. The transformation was nearly complete, but Maria understood now it would never truly end. Each visitor who descended those steps, each child who heard the stories, each bell that would ring, all continued the work Sarah Whitman had started. Freedom wasn't a destination but a journey, and the terminal that had once been endpoint was now a beginning. "Tell me about the brave lady again," Isabella requested, settling into her mother's arms. Maria began the story, but this time she wove in their own. How a widow and her daughter had found courage in a chamber of courage. How loss became purpose. How $300 had purchased priceless heritage. The October moon rose over Liberty Mills, the same moon that had witnessed escapes and arrivals, sorrow and celebration. In a trailer above history, stories merged and multiplied, past and present dancing together toward a future bright with possibility. Sarah Whitman had risked everything to say yes to justice. Maria Rodriguez had said yes to survival and found herself guardian of that same justice. The transformation continued, rippling outward like bells of freedom, like hands reaching upward, like voices no longer silenced but singing. And in the chamber below, where shadows held memories and brick walls whispered truth, the Underground Railroad ran on, not north to Canada now, but forward through time, carrying all who chose courage toward the promise of a better day. The site that had saved lives in 1863 was saving them still in 2024. Different dangers, same destination. The radical idea that all people deserved dignity, that freedom was birthright, that hope could survive any darkness if someone somewhere was brave enough to light a candle and say, "This way, follow me, you're safe here." Maria Rodriguez had lit that candle. Now it would never go out. 1 year after Maria Rodriguez spent her last $300 on a rusted trailer, she stood before an audience of 500 people gathered for the official dedication of the Sarah Whitman National Historic Site and Freedom Center. The transformation was complete, yet in many ways it was just beginning. The trailer park had evolved into something unrecognizable from its former state. Where weeds once choked forgotten lots, manicured gardens now bloomed with heritage plants, cotton, tobacco, and vegetables that would have grown in the 1860s. The original trailers remained, but restored and repurposed. One served as administrative offices, another as a research library, a third as an educational center, where Isabella now gave daily presentations to school children. Maria adjusted the microphone, looking out at the crowd. Dignitaries filled the front rows, the governor of Georgia, representatives from the Smithsonian, leaders from various historical societies. But her eyes found the faces that mattered most. Isabella in her custom wheelchair, decorated with freedom bells, Dr. Patricia Williams beaming with professorial pride, Agent Ramirez, now Director Ramirez of the site's security, and surprisingly, Thomas and Carolyn Hartwell, sitting together in reconciliation. "A year ago," Maria began, her teacher's voice carrying clearly, "I was a desperate mother with $300 looking for shelter. What I found instead was purpose. What my daughter and I discovered wasn't just a historical site, it was a reminder that ordinary people doing extraordinary things can change the world." The audience applauded, but Maria raised her hand for quiet. "Today we dedicate this site not just to the past, but to the future. Not just to those who escaped slavery, but to all who seek freedom from oppression, poverty, and hopelessness. This ground is sacred not because of what was, but because of what can be." Behind her, the Freedom Bell, Isabella's design, made reality. Through Hartwell funding, gleamed in the morning sun. Cast from bronze and silver, it bore the handprints of the first 100 visitors, creating the rainbow pattern Isabella had envisioned. "Before we cut the ribbon," Maria continued, "I want to share something we discovered just last week." The crowd leaned forward. Even after a year, the site continued revealing secrets. The latest discovery had come from the fifth chamber, accessed through what everyone had assumed was a sealed well. In the newest chamber we found this. Maria held up a preserved piece of fabric. A quilt square, part of the Underground Railroad's code system. This pattern, called Flying Geese, pointed escapees north. But on the back, sewn in tiny stitches, we found a message. She paused, feeling the weight of history. "Fear is the price of freedom, but courage is the currency of hope. Pay it forward." It was signed S.W. Sarah Whitman. The silence was profound. Then, from the back of the crowd, someone began clapping slowly. Others joined, the applause building until it thundered across the site. Maria saw tears on many faces, including her own. The ribbon cutting was ceremonial. The site had been operating informally for months. But the symbolism mattered. As the governor and Maria cut the blue silk together, the freedom bell rang for The first time, its clear tone carrying across Liberty Mills and beyond, Isabella had the honor of the first official ring. She wheeled herself to the bell's rope, paused, then pulled with all her strength. The sound that emerged seemed to contain multitudes, sorrow for those who hadn't made it, joy for those who had, hope for those still seeking their own freedom. "For my daddy," Isabella said into the microphone, "who taught us that bridges connect more than places, they connect hearts." The dedication ceremony continued with presentations from scholars, the unveiling of a statue depicting Sarah Whitman and an unnamed freedom seeker, and the first public tours of all 5 chambers. But Maria found herself drawn away from the crowds, needing a moment of solitude. She walked to the memorial garden, where a small marker bore Francisco's name alongside those of the documented freedom seekers. The Hartwell Foundation had insisted on including it. "All who sacrificed for others belong here," Thomas had said. "We did it, mi amor," Maria whispered to the stone. "We're home." "Mrs. Rodriguez?" A tentative voice interrupted her reverie. Maria turned to find a young woman, early 20s, holding a baby. "Yes? I'm Amelia Johnson. My great-great-great-grandmother was Amelia Turner. She—" The woman's voice broke. "She escaped through here in 1863. We have her diary. She wrote about a lady who gave her cornbread and told her brave girls changed the world." Maria's knees went weak. Amelia, the girl whose letter she'd read alone in the chamber so many nights. She made it to Canada, then back to Chicago after the war. Became a teacher, like you. Had 8 children, 23 grandchildren. We're scattered all over now, but when we heard about this place, tears flowed freely. We had to come, had to say thank you. Maria embraced the woman, feeling the circle close. Past and present, loss and redemption, all connected in this moment. "Would you like to see the chamber where she hid more than anything?" As they walked toward the entrance, Amelia continued, "I brought something from her diary. She wrote about the lady who helped them, Mrs. Sarah. Said she had eyes like storm clouds but hands like morning sun, kind and fierce together." "Sarah Whitman," Maria confirmed. "She saved so many." "She saved us, all of us who came after." Amelia shifted her baby. "This is Sarah, named for her." They descended into the first chamber together, LED lights revealing what candles once kept hidden. Amelia gasped, recognizing descriptions from her ancestor's diary. She wrote about that shelf, said Mrs. Sarah kept medicine there, and that corner where children would huddle together for warmth. Amelia's voice dropped to a whisper. "Great-great-great-grandma." Amelia was 7, same age as my daughter will be. "Same age as Isabella was when we found this place," Maria added. The parallels weren't lost on either woman. They stood in silence, feeling the weight of generations. Then baby Sarah gurgled, breaking the spell with the insistence of new life. "The freedom bell," Maria suggested. "Would you like to ring it? For your ancestor?" "Could I?" They returned to the surface where the dedication crowd was dispersing into tour groups. At the bell, Amelia handed her baby to Maria, then grasped the rope. "For all the Amelias," she said, and pulled. The tone that emerged seemed different this time, not mournful but triumphant. Visitors paused, understanding they were witnessing something sacred. Isabella rolled over, her face bright with curiosity. "Mom, who's this?" Maria made introductions, watching Isabella's eyes widen as she understood the connection. "You're her family? The brave girl's family?" Isabella reached out to touch baby Sarah's hand. "My mom reads her letters all the time. She says Amelia proves that scared kids can grow up to change everything. Would you—" Amelia hesitated. "Would you like to hold her? Sarah, I mean." Isabella nodded eagerly, and with careful maneuvering, the baby was settled in her lap. "The image?" A child in a wheelchair holding the descendant of a child who'd once hidden below captured everything the site represented. "Dr. Thompson," Maria called to a passing photographer, "could you—" The photo would later win a Pulitzer. Two children bridging centuries, hope cradled between them. But in the moment, it was simply family, extended across time and space by shared story. The afternoon brought unexpected revelations. During the VIP luncheon, Thomas Hartwell approached Maria with a folder. "I've been researching family history since our first conversation," he began. "What I found, well, it changes things." Maria opened the folder to find genealogical charts, letters, and a daguerreotype of Sarah Whitman. "Carolyn and I aren't just descendants of Sarah's sister," Thomas explained. "We're descendants of Sarah herself. After the war, after Josiah died, she remarried a former slave named Samuel Turner. They had 3 children raised in the North. My great-grandmother was their youngest." Maria stared at the photograph. Sarah Whitman in her later years, surrounded by mixed-race children, her storm-cloud eyes now peaceful. "The family buried this history," Thomas continued, "too controversial for the times. But finding those chambers, seeing what you've done here, it's time for truth." Carolyn joined them, her earlier hostility replaced by something approaching humility. "I was wrong. About everything. The artifacts, the site. What matters? I let greed override heritage." "We all have choices," Maria said carefully. "What matters is what we choose now." "Then I choose this." Carolyn pulled out a document. "Full funding for the site's expansion, the Academic Research Center, the new museum wing, the National Education Program. No strings, no conditions, just penance." The document outlined a $50 million endowment. Maria's hands shook as she read it. "This is beyond generous." "It's necessary," Thomas said firmly. "Sarah Whitman, our ancestor, risked everything for justice. We've profited from injustice. Long enough. Time to balance the scales." That evening, as sunset painted the site in golden light, Maria found herself back in the original chamber. So much had changed since that desperate night when she'd first descended these steps. The trailer above was now climate-controlled, structurally reinforced, transformed into a comfortable home. Isabella thrived in her new school, her medical needs fully covered by the site's benefits package. The repository of historical documents had grown into a major research center, attracting scholars worldwide. But the chamber itself remained unchanged, preserved exactly as found. Maria lit a candle, electric lights for tours, but flames for reflection. In the dancing shadows she could almost see them, the frightened families, the brave conductors, the children clutching rough-carved dolls. "Thank you," she whispered, "for trusting me with your stories." Footsteps on the stairs. Isabella, navigating carefully with her new prosthetic braces. Therapy, funded by the site's medical coverage, was giving her increased mobility. "Mom, there's someone here to see you." Maria climbed up to find a delegation waiting. 3 women, different ages, all bearing the unmistakable mark of hard times survived. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" The eldest spoke with a slight accent. "We heard about what you've done. How you saved your home by finding history. She paused, gathering courage. "We're facing eviction too. From the Riverside Trailer Park, 2 counties. Over. Developers want the land for condos." Maria's heart ached with recognition. "I'm so sorry. How can I help?" "The thing is," another woman interjected, "Riverside sits on old land too. Tobacco plantation before the war. My grandson found some weird bricks in the creek bed. Could be nothing, but could be something," Maria finished. She thought of Sarah Whitman's quilt square. "Pay it forward." "I'll come look," she promised. "Bring Dr. Williams some equipment. If there's history there, we'll find it." After they left, Isabella tugged Maria's sleeve. "Are we going to help them find their own chambers?" "If we can, yes." "Good." Isabella's smile was pure Francisco. Everyone deserves their miracle. Later that night, after Isabella was asleep, Maria sat at her kitchen table, the same table where she'd once spread final bills, counting out $300. Now she reviewed expansion plans, educational proposals, research applications. The transformation still felt surreal. Her laptop chimed with an email from the Smithsonian. "Congratulations! The Rodriguez family collection has been approved for our permanent exhibition, Voices of Freedom, the Underground Railroad Revealed. Your story exemplifies how contemporary Americans connect with historical struggle." Maria closed the laptop. Awards were nice, recognition gratifying, but the real victory was simpler. Isabella's laughter echoing through their home, the security of knowing they'd never face eviction again, the purpose that filled each day with meaning. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Williams entered carrying 2 cups of her infamous strong coffee. "Couldn't sleep?" the professor asked. "Too much to process. Did you see the Hartwell endowment? $50 million. That's generational wealth being returned to serve justice. It's what happens when truth meets conscience." Dr. Williams settled across from her. "Speaking of which, I have news. The university's made their decision. They're offering you the directorship of the new Center for Underground Railroad Studies. Full professorship, research budget, the works." Maria stared. "But I don't have a doctorate." "You have something better. Lived experience bridging past and present. Your discoveries, your site management, your educational programs. Maria, you've become one of the foremost authorities on underground railroad preservation." "I need to think." "Of course, but consider this. Isabella could attend the university. School, best education possible. You'd have resources to help other sites, other families, facing what you faced. Pay it forward," as Sarah Whitman wrote. After Dr. Williams left, Maria walked through her transformed home. In Isabella's room, her daughter slept surrounded by books about brave girls changing the world. On the walls, her drawings showed the Freedom Bell, the Chambers, and always people holding hands across time. Maria stepped onto the deck, gazing at the lights illuminating the historical site. Somewhere beneath, 5 chambers held their eternal secrets. But they were no longer graves of silence. They were wombs of story, birthplaces of continued courage. The October moon rose full and bright, the same moon that had witnessed every escape, every return, every act of defiance and love. Maria thought of Sarah Whitman, risking everything for strangers, of Amelia Turner, 7 years old and brave beyond measure, of Francisco, who'd believed in purposes bigger than self. "Yes," she whispered to the moon, to the memories, to the future waiting to unfold. Yes to all of it. Tomorrow she'd accept the university position. Tomorrow she'd visit Riverside Trailer Park, searching for new history to save new families. Tomorrow, Isabella would ring the Freedom Bell for visiting students, sharing stories of courage across centuries. But tonight, Maria Rodriguez, mother, teacher, guardian of sacred ground, stood witness to transformation, complete yet ongoing. She'd bought a trailer for $300 and discovered that true wealth isn't measured in money, but in meaning, not in possessions, but in purpose. The Underground Railroad still ran, not through wooden chambers now, but through human hearts willing to say, "This way to freedom, this way to hope, this way home." And in a trailer above history, lights burned bright against the darkness, beacons for all still seeking their own 30 pieces of silver transformed into invaluable heritage, their own last dollars becoming. First steps toward legacy. The bell would ring tomorrow, and the next day, and all the days after. Each tone a reminder. What we think will break us might remake us. What seems like ending could be beginning. What appears worthless might be priceless. Pay it forward. The currency of hope. The price of freedom. Maria went inside, checked on Isabella. One more time. then settled into bed in her transformed home. Through the window, stars watched over Liberty Mills, the same stars that had guided refugees north, that now guided visitors to understanding. Somewhere in those stars, Francisco smiled. Somewhere in the chambers below, Sarah Whitman rested at peace. And somewhere in America, another desperate mother counted out her last dollars, not knowing that miracles sometimes hide beneath rotted floors, waiting for brave hearts to find. Them, the terminal had saved them all, past, present, and future. The railroad ran on, eternal and essential, powered by the simplest fuel, human beings choosing to help each other find their way home. Maria closed her eyes, listening to the heartbeat of history pulsing beneath her floor. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, new connections across time. Tonight, she was exactly where she belonged, guardian of stories, mother of hope, keeper of the keys to chambers that would never again hide in darkness, but would shine forever as beacons of what ordinary people could do when they chose courage over comfort, right over easy, love over fear. $300, a lifetime of purpose, a legacy beyond price. The transformation was complete. The journey had just begun. 20 years had passed since Maria Rodriguez discovered the underground railroad chambers beneath her trailer, and Liberty Mills had become a name known worldwide. The October morning was crisp as Maria, now 51, with silver streaking through her hair, stood before the newly completed International Center for Freedom Studies, a stunning glass and brick structure that somehow harmonized perfectly with the historical site it served. "Ready, Mom?" Isabella, 26, and standing tall with the aid of advanced prosthetic supports, adjusted Maria's academic robes. Her daughter had just completed her doctorate in historical preservation at Harvard, her thesis on living history. The Liberty Mills model, already being hailed as groundbreaking. "As ready as one can be," Maria smiled, straightening the medallion that marked her as Director Emeritus of the Sarah Whitman National Historic Site. Today's dedication wasn't just for a building, it was the culmination of 2 decades of transformation that had rippled far beyond their small corner of Georgia. The crowd gathering outside represented the true scope of their impact. Descendants of freedom seekers mingled with international dignitaries. Students from the Rodriguez Scholars Program, which had sent over 500 underprivileged youth to college, chatted with professors from universities across 6 continents. And threading through them all were the voices of freedom docents, volunteers who'd been trained in Maria's methodology of personal narrative history. "Professor Rodriguez?" A young man approached, clearly nervous. "I'm David Chen from the Beijing Freedom Museum. Thank you for agreeing to the partnership. Your model of community-based historical preservation has inspired so many of us." Maria clasped his hand warmly. "The stories belong to all of us, David. That's what Sarah Whitman understood. Freedom isn't limited by borders." As they talked, Maria's mind drifted to the journey that had brought them here. After accepting the university position, she'd helped identify and preserve 17 other Underground Railroad sites. The Riverside Trailer Park discovery had been just the beginning. Each site saved meant families kept in their homes, communities revitalized, histories reclaimed. The freedom bell began to ring, the signal for the ceremony to begin. But this wasn't the original bell. That one was now in the Smithsonian, its surface covered with thousands of handprints. This new bell, larger and more resonant, bore a different kind of marking. Names of every documented person who'd passed through the Liberty Mills station, finally given the recognition they deserved. "Ladies and gentlemen," Isabella's voice carried across the crowd as she took the podium, She'd become the site's principal educator, her personal story of overcoming disability intertwining with the historical narratives in ways that moved even the most hardened visitors. 20 years ago, my mother spent her last $300 on a broken-down trailer. What she found beneath it changed not just our lives, but helped America confront its past and shape its future. The audience settled, drawn by Isabella's natural charisma. Maria watched with pride as her daughter commanded the stage, thinking of the terrified 6-year-old who'd once worried about having a home. Today we dedicate not just a building, but a promise, Isabella continued, the International Center. For Freedom Studies will connect liberation movements across time and space, from the American Underground Railroad to the French Resistance, from the fall of the Berlin Wall to modern refugee networks. All share the same truth: ordinary people, doing extraordinary things in the service of human dignity. Applause rippled through the crowd, but Isabella raised her hand. Before we cut the ribbon, my mother has something to share. A final discovery that reminds us why this work matters. Maria approached the podium, her legs steadier than they'd been 20 years ago, but her heart pounding just as hard. In her hands, she carried a small wooden box, worn smooth by countless hands. Last month, while preparing for today's ceremony, we opened a time capsule buried in 1871 by Sarah Whitman herself. Inside, we found this. She opened the box, revealing a collection of small objects: a thimble, a brass button, a child's tooth, a lock of hair, and a letter. Sarah Whitman saved a token from every person who passed through these chambers. Over 200 items, each representing a life saved, a family preserved, a future made possible. And this letter, Maria's voice caught. This letter was addressed to whoever found the capsule. She unfolded the aged paper, reading in a clear voice, "To the keeper of tomorrow." As they talked, Maria's mind drifted to the journey that had brought them here. After accepting the university position, she'd helped identify and preserve 17 other Underground Railroad sites. The Riverside Trailer Park discovery had been just the beginning. Each site saved meant families kept in their homes, communities revitalized, histories reclaimed. The freedom bell began to ring, the signal for the ceremony to begin. But this wasn't the original bell. That one was now in the Smithsonian, its surface covered with thousands of handprints. This new bell, larger and more resonant, bore a different kind of marking. Names of every documented person who'd passed through the Liberty Mills station, finally given the recognition they deserved. "Ladies and gentlemen," Isabella's voice carried across the crowd as she took the podium. She'd become the site's principal educator, her personal story of overcoming disability intertwining with the historical narratives in ways that moved even the most hardened visitors. 20 years ago, my mother spent her last $300 on a broken-down trailer. What she found beneath it changed not just our lives, but helped America confront its past and shape its future. The audience settled, drawn by Isabella's natural charisma. Maria watched with pride as her daughter commanded the stage, thinking of the terrified 6-year-old who'd once worried about having a home. Today we dedicate not just a building, but a promise, Isabella continued, the International Center. For Freedom Studies will connect liberation movements across time and space, from the American Underground Railroad to the French Resistance, from the fall of the Berlin Wall to modern refugee networks. All share the same truth: ordinary people, doing extraordinary things in the service of human dignity. Applause rippled through the crowd, but Isabella raised her hand. "Before we cut the ribbon, my mother has something to share, a final discovery that reminds us why this work matters." Maria approached the podium, her legs steadier than they'd been 20 years ago, but her heart pounding just as hard. In her hands, she carried a small wooden box, worn smooth by countless hands. Last month, while preparing for today's ceremony, we opened a time capsule buried in 1871 by Sarah Whitman herself. Inside, we found this. She opened the box, revealing a collection of small objects: a thimble, a brass button, a child's tooth, a lock of hair, and a letter. Sarah Whitman saved a token from every person who passed through these chambers. Over 200 items, each representing a life saved, a family preserved, a future made possible. And this letter, Maria's voice caught. This letter was addressed to whoever found the capsule. She unfolded the aged paper, reading in a clear voice, "To the keeper of tomorrow's memories. If you read this, then our secret has finally seen daylight. Know that beneath your feet lies sacred ground, watered by tears of desperation and hope alike. We who built these chambers, we who guided the desperate to freedom, we were ordinary people who chose extraordinary courage. I pray this place becomes not a monument to our heroism, for we were not heroes, merely humans who could not abide injustice, but a reminder that every generation faces its choice: to accept wrong or resist it, to profit from suffering or alleviate it, to be silent or to speak. The tokens in this box are all I have left of those who passed through. I never learned most of their names, never knew if they reached freedom, but I knew their hopes, felt their fears, witnessed their courage. They taught me that freedom isn't a destination, but a direction. Not a gift, but a responsibility. To you, who stand where I once stood, I offer this charge. Let these chambers echo not with silence, but with story. Let every visitor understand that the Underground Railroad wasn't about hiding. It was about revealing the best of human nature in the worst of circumstances. Remember us not as we were, but as we aspired to be. And know that somewhere in time, we watch and hope that our small acts of rebellion grew into your garden of justice. In hope and determination, Sarah Whitman, October 1871. The silence that followed was profound. Then from somewhere in the crowd, someone began singing, an old spiritual Maria recognized from her research. Other voices joined, the melody carrying across the site, like the freedom songs that had once given hope to those hiding below. When the last note faded, Maria wiped her eyes and continued. Sarah Whitman's charge has guided everything we've done here. This isn't just about preserving the past, it's about inspiring the future. Today, as we open the International Center, we expand that mission globally. She gestured to the building. Behind them, inside, you'll find exhibits connecting liberation movements across centuries. Interactive classrooms where students will learn that courage has no color, no nationality, no expiration date. Research facilities where scholars will uncover more hidden histories. And yes, preservation workshops where communities facing displacement will learn to find and tell their own stories. But that's not all, Isabella added, joining her mother. We're announcing the Whitman-Rodriguez Global Initiative. In partnership with UNESCO, we'll identify and preserve sites of conscience worldwide. Because every culture has its underground railroads, paths to freedom that deserve recognition and protection. The ribbon cutting that followed was more celebration than ceremony. As the silk parted, the doors opened to reveal the center's stunning interior. The architect had incorporated elements from the original chambers: exposed brick walls, reproduction torch brackets, even a recreation of the hidden entrance Maria had fallen through 20 years ago. But it was the Hall of Voices that drew the most attention. Using cutting-edge holographic technology, visitors could stand in the center of the room and hear stories from freedom seekers across history. Not just American slaves, but refugees from every conflict, survivors of every oppression. The voices overlapped and harmonized, creating what one reviewer would later call a symphony of human resilience. As Maria walked through the exhibits, she found herself at the Rodriguez family display. There was the photo from that first night, her, mud-covered and exhausted, holding Isabella. There was Francisco's picture, listed among heroes of the journey. There was the $300, preserved under glass, the investment that changed history, the placard read. Strange seeing your life in a museum, a familiar voice said behind her. Maria turned to find Thomas Hartwell, now in his 80s but still sharp. Beside him stood Carolyn, who'd spent the last 15 years running the Hartwell Foundation's historical justice programs. "Thank you for coming," Maria said warmly. The old antagonism had long... They sat together in comfortable silence, the October sun streaming through the windows. Francisco would have loved. So many ghosts laid to rest, so many stories given voice. The climax of the day came at sunset. The entire crowd gathered in the memorial garden for the ceremony of names, a tradition Maria had started where they read aloud every documented name of those who'd passed through the station. But tonight was different. Tonight they would unveil the Wall of Unknown Heroes, a monument to all the freedom seekers whose names were lost to history. Each visitor had been invited to add a stone to the base, building a foundation of remembrance. Isabella stood to read the first names, her voice carrying the weight of years spent studying these stories. Moses Washington, 34, escaped from the Dawson plantation. Ruth Washington, 30, his wife. Children Samuel, age 7, and baby Mary, 8 months. As each name was read, a bell chimed. The litany went on, lives saved, families preserved, futures made possible. When they reached the unnamed ones, the format changed. Unknown woman, approximately 20 years old, traveling with infant. Arrived February 1862. Unknown child, gender unknown, age approximately 10. Passed through alone, July 1863. The crowd had grown silent, many weeping openly. History had faces now, had breath and hope and fear made tangible. As the last name was read, Maria stepped forward. These chambers saved bodies, but what saved souls was courage. The courage of those who ran, those who helped, those who refused to accept injustice as inevitable. That courage echoes forward, calling us to our own moments of choice. She paused, seeing nods of understanding throughout the crowd. 20 years ago, I thought I was saving my family by buying that trailer. But the truth is, this place saved us. It gave us purpose, community, and a connection to something larger than ourselves. It taught us that the currency of hope, as Sarah Whitman wrote, must be paid forward. The freedom bell began to toll, one ring for each documented soul who'd passed through the station. 217 times it rang, each tone carrying across Liberty Mills and beyond. As the last echo faded, a remarkable thing happened. Spontaneously, visitors began sharing their own stories. A Vietnamese refugee spoke of hiding in boat holds. A Syrian doctor described underground networks that helped him reach safety. A Holocaust survivor's daughter shared her mother's escape story. The Underground Railroad, they all understood, wasn't just American history, it was human history, endlessly repeated wherever tyranny met resistance. As darkness fell, luminaries were lit throughout the site, one for each person saved, but also for each person still seeking freedom somewhere in the world. The lights created a constellation on the ground, mirroring the stars above. Maria found herself back in the original chamber, now equipped with subtle lighting that preserved its atmosphere while making it safely accessible. The shelves that had once held provisions for fugitives now displayed artifacts and interpretive materials. But the feeling remained, sacred, powerful, transformative. "Mom," Isabella appeared at the entrance. "There's someone here who wants to meet you." A young woman descended, early 20s, clearly nervous. She clutched a manila envelope like a lifeline. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm Keisha Williams. I'm..." I'm facing eviction from my trailer. Single mom, 2 kids. I heard about what you did, how you found history and saved your home. I was wondering..." Maria's heart ached with recognition, the cycle continuing, the need ongoing. "Tell me about your place. It's in Alabama, old land. My grandmother always said there were stories buried there. I found some old bricks, weird symbols. The landlord wants to sell to developers." The words tumbled out desperately familiar. Maria looked at Isabella, who nodded. They'd already discussed expanding their preservation assistance program. "We'll help," Maria promised. "Bring your documentation. We'll send a team to investigate. If there's history there, we'll find it." The relief on Keisha's face was profound. "I brought pictures, soil samples. I've been studying your method, documenting everything, researching land records." "Smart," Isabella approved. "Mom always says the first rule of preservation is documentation." As they talked, Maria realized this was the true legacy, not the buildings or awards, but the model they'd created for communities to save themselves through their own histories. The Underground Railroad had been about people helping people find freedom. Now their work helped people find freedom through preservation, through story, through connection to something larger than themselves. Later that night, after the crowds had dispersed and the site had settled into quiet, Maria sat in her renovated trailer with Isabella, Dr. Williams, and the core team that had seen this transformation through. The space that had once been barely habitable was now comfortable, but still simple. Maria had insisted on maintaining its essential character. 20 years, Dr. Williams mused, raising a glass of wine. From desperation to this. You know, universities teach the Liberty Mills model as a case study now? The accidental preservationist, Maria laughed. If someone had told me that night, covered in mud, $300 poorer, terrified about our future, that I'd end up here. You'd have done exactly the same thing, Isabella interjected, because that's who you are, someone who sees need and acts, who finds treasure in what others abandon. Speaking of which, Agent Ramirez, now retired but still protective of the site, pulled out a tablet. 47 sites preserved using your model. Estimated families saved from displacement, over 300. Students educated through the Rodriguez Scholars Program, 500 and counting. Economic impact on Liberty Mills. Transformation from dying town to cultural destination. I'd say that $300 was the best investment in American history. Maria shook her head. It wasn't the money. It was the choice to look deeper, to listen to what the past was trying to tell us. Sarah Whitman and all those brave souls, they were the real investors. We just collected the dividends. A soft knock interrupted their celebration. Carolyn Hartwell entered, carrying a wrapped package. "Sorry to intrude, but I wanted to give this to you privately." She handed the package to Maria. "It's from the Hartwell family collection. We think it belongs here." Maria unwrapped it carefully, revealing a leather journal. Opening it, she gasped. It was Sarah Whitman's personal diary, the complete version, including entries they'd never seen. The final entry, Carolyn pointed to a marked page. "Read it." Maria read aloud. October 1865. "The war is over, slavery ended, but our work continues. For I have learned that freedom is not achieved by proclamation, but by daily choice, not granted by law, but claimed by courage. The chambers below will someday be found, and I pray those who find them understand. We were not special. We were simply people who chose love over fear, action over comfort, justice over safety. To the future keepers of this ground, remember that every generation faces its test. The chambers may no longer hide bodies, but let them shelter truth. Let them remind all who enter that ordinary people can defy extraordinary evil, that small acts of kindness can upend systems of cruelty. I go to my rest knowing the railroad runs on, not through tunnels and safe houses now, but through hearts brave enough to say, "This is wrong," and hands willing to make it right. May you be such hearts and hands. May you pay forward the currency of hope. The room fell silent, each person absorbed in the words that seemed written specifically for them. She knew, Isabella whispered. Somehow she knew. Prophets usually do, Dr. Williams observed. They see patterns we miss, truths we avoid. Sarah. Whitman saw that justice isn't a destination, but a journey, one that requires new conductors for each generation. As if by agreement, they moved together to the deck, looking out over the transformed site. Where rusted trailers had once marked forgotten lives, now stood a complex dedicated to remembering. Where weeds had choked possibility, gardens bloomed with promise. Where silence had buried truth, stories rang like bells of freedom. "What's next?" Ramirez asked. "The work continues," Maria replied. "Keisha in Alabama needs help. There are sites in Mississippi showing promise. The international initiatives are just beginning, and somewhere, someone's counting their last dollars, not knowing they're about to find treasure. The railroad runs on," Isabella quoted. "Different cargo now. Hope instead of people, truth instead of secrets, but same destination. Freedom." The October moon rose, full and bright, the same moon that had witnessed every journey through those chambers. Maria thought of all who'd stood on this ground, the frightened, the brave, the desperate, the determined, from Sarah Whitman to the unnamed freedom seekers, from Francisco to baby Sarah in Amelia's arms, all connected by the choice to transform suffering into salvation. "Thank you," Maria whispered to the sky, to the past, to the mysterious forces that had guided her to that soft spot in the floor 20 years ago. The others drifted back inside, but Maria lingered, feeling the weight and wonder of completed circles. The trailer she'd bought in desperation had become a beacon of hope. The chambers meant to hide, now illuminated. The stories, silenced, now sang. And somewhere in America, another single mother counted out her last dollars, unaware that beneath her feet might lie revolution, that in her desperation might hide opportunity, that her ending might be beginning. The freedom bell stood silent now, but ready for tomorrow's ring. The museum lights dimmed to emergency levels. The site settled into sleep, watched over by stars and stories alike. Maria Rodriguez, teacher, mother, accidental historian, guardian of sacred ground, went inside to her transformed home. On her kitchen table lay plans for the next preservation, the next family to save, the next story to tell. $300, 20 years. Countless lives changed. The currency of hope paid forward into eternity. The symphony complete, but never-ending. Each note a choice for justice, each measure a step toward freedom, each movement a life transformed by the simple revolutionary act of looking deeper, reaching further, believing more. The terminal below still sheltered travelers, not bodies now, but spirits, not fugitives, but pilgrims, all seeking the same destination, the place where story becomes history, where history becomes hope, where hope becomes home. And, in a trailer above it all, lights burned steadily. Lighthouse and library, shelter and shrine, ending and eternal beginning. The Underground Railroad ran on, and Maria Rodriguez remained its faithful conductor, guiding all who would listen from darkness to light, from silence to song, from last dollars to lasting legacy. Tomorrow would bring new seekers, new stories, new salvations. Tonight brought peace, purpose, and the profound gratitude of promises kept, trust honored, and hope forever paid forward. The transformation was complete. The journey would never end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.